Well, hello again. We have another full build video, and in this video we're going to make a Hispaniensis Gladius, which I titled the Felix Sword. I like to make a drawing first of the project, and here's my drawing. It's a big sword, so I need a bunch of steel. Starting off with some 80 CRV2, and I'm cutting this at 6-inch sections. In the other layer of material, I will use pure nickel. This nickel is 5/1000ths of an inch thick, so it's really thin, about the thickness of 2 sheets of paper. And I'm cutting these also to 6-inch lengths, 1.5 inches wide. Let's clean up the steel a little bit. It was pretty rusty. Using the Scotch-Brite wheel, you can really clean it well. Here's our two materials, starting off with the 3/16 80 CRV2 and then the 5 thou pure nickel. I'm going to just weld at the ends here so that everything sticks together. And weld a handle on it. We're going to be using the gas forge today. Let's get that up to temperature and slide our billet in. While the forge is heating up, let me talk a little bit about what this project is all about. This is going to be part of the YouTube Military Challenge. And in the video description, I will have a little link where you can vote for your favorite. Also, you will see all the other makers' links, and you can see the videos that they made. So please go vote. Alright, and now begins my favorite part, forging. This is quite a big billet, but the power hammer makes easy work of it all. Just setting the forge welds here, making sure everything is stuck. And then I begin to draw everything out. Keep it good and hot. You can see we're starting to get more length here. Power hammer makes quick work of it all. Now that the bar is drawn out, turn off the power hammer and let the bar cool. Once it's cool, we're going to cut the ends off. And once we've sliced it in a couple pieces, we're just going to clean up the sides that meet. Here we have the 4 pieces. Each piece has 25 layers. Making sure we weld up the ends so that they all stick together. And then back into the forge. 100 layers of 80 CRV2 and pure nickel. We had 13 layers of 80 CRV2 and 12 layers of pure nickel. That equals 25. 25 cut into 4 pieces, restacked. We got 100 layers. This will give really nice definition in the pattern. That's a heavy billet. Now we're going to put the dies, these are ladder dies that I made for my power hammer. We're going to mount them onto the hammer dies. And we're just going to bolt these on. We Make sure they're good and snug. And once we have a good heat, good hot heat, we're going to start forging in those ladder lines. So because it's a laminated pattern, the pattern is quite boring if we were to just use it as a sword. It would just be straight, long lines. But because we're forging these marks in there, and once we grind those marks off, then we have this really, really wavy line pattern. It looks really cool. They call it a ladder pattern. There's our whole bar laddered. And now we go to grind all the bumps off. This always takes a while, but if your grinder's at the right height, you should be fine doing it. Lots of sparks. Make sure you wear your safety glasses. Alright, that took almost half an hour of solid grinding. Now we're going to put it in the forge. And what we'll do first is we're going to forge our tang onto the sword. Get that nice taper. The material is still quite thick, but once we forge it down, we'll get it closer and closer to dimension. The Hispaniensis Gladius has somewhat of a waist to it, like an hourglass figure. So we want to make sure we forge that in a little bit. There's my little girl coming to visit me. Her name is Rosalie. So we've got the roller mill going, making sure that we roll everything out to the correct and even thickness. Just working small sections of the sword at a time. You see I got about a foot of sword that I'm working on. And then I'm going to move to the tip later. So first forging this down. You can see how wide it is up here yet. We're going to be slimming that down quite a ways. You can already begin to see some of that waist shape. Get that tip in there a little bit. You don't want to forge it too much because it will just stretch the layers. And then they'll be a little bit distorted from the rest of the layers. Rolling it out to the right thickness also. When you know everything is flat, then it's easy to straighten things. Straightening usually takes a number of heats, but it's easier to spend time here now than later on. Now we're going to go for a normalizing and annealing cycle out of the kiln. My kiln is digitally controlled, so I can check on it when I'm out of the shop. So here we are at 1650. It's cooling off a bit. Once it's down to just about room temperature, it goes in the kiln for a 1500 degree cycle. It's Fahrenheit. And then finally a 1350 degree cycle. Now it's annealed. Going to mount this on my surface grinder. And we're going to surface grind this in stages. So let's turn on the pump. Now it'll go automatically. This is so slick. I converted this machine a few months ago after that I bought it for $300. It is so precise. And it's just fantastic. I can just walk away from it and let it do its own thing. It's mesmerizing to watch it. Alright, we got it roughly surface ground now. We're going to lay out some layout fluid. This is little Jacco Jr. He likes to be helpful in the shop. Firstly, I'm clamping a ruler to mark out the center line of the sword. And I have this saw blade material, and I'm going to be making a half template out of this. It's flat on one side, so I can line it up at the center line. So let's profile this close to dimension. And then when I clamp this on here, I can line up that flat side with the center line and scribe around that perimeter. Then I flip it over and do the other side. There's the perfect, exactly the same scribe line on both sides. Grinding the entire perimeter doesn't take long this way. There we have the profile of the sword. We're going to be putting some condensol on here for when we go to harden it. So let's put it in the kiln. The kiln is set at 1480 degrees, which is my favorite temperature for ADC or V2. And then we go in to the quench. Checking for straightness. It has a tiny little warp in it, but let's clamp it between these boards. Hopefully the warp goes away. After an hour, I'll pull these clamps off. Let's have a look. That warp is still a little persistent, but the blade is very hard. Now we're going to go in for a temper cycle. We're going to temper it at 475 degrees Fahrenheit. And the next morning, we can pull it out, and it is fully tempered. You can actually see how the steel shows up so differently from the pure nickel. Alright, now after heat treatment, we're actually going to put on a crispier belt. And we're going to surface grind it. So here's the surface ground sword on the drawing. Look how good it looks. Well, that tiny warp was thankfully not a difficult one to take out. It was merely just a little bend. And now it is perfectly straight again. Now we're going to do some layout fluid again. Going to mark out the center line here. And we're going to start measuring out where we'd like to have the fuller. I'm going to grind a full-length fuller into this sword. The way I do that is I'm clamping my sword blade horizontally onto a board. Keep checking it, and using the small wheel attachment that I got from Maritime Knife Supply, I'm going to grind this in. Back and forth and back and forth. To clean up the fuller, I've rounded off one of my Scotch-Brite wheels. And it's going to take out a lot of the scratches. So what I did on the other side, I'm going to do on this side now. When you screw things to boards and everything is square and 90 degrees, then you can get a really good job done. The fuller goes a little ways into the handle and goes all the way to the end of the blade. There we have it. The fuller is ground. Now the Scotch-Brite wheel doesn't take all these scratches out, so we're going to begin hand sanding. A little bit of oil, starting with 320 grit. I spent about an hour hand sanding here, making sure that fuller is up to about 600 grit. And now, while everything is flat yet, I'm going to clamp on my Nordic Edge file guide. This will give me a perfect flat edge, and this will allow me to mill the tang just a little thinner than the blade, as you can see here. These file guides make it so easy to fit up guards. Now we're going to surface grind the tang to the final thickness. This is my 1943 Norton surface grinder that I also converted to using belts. I think as long as your wheel is solid aluminium or steel, you will have perfect tolerance. Alright, now using the waterfall platen, we're actually going to clean up the bottom of the shoulders so that we keep that nice little radius in there. You can see how handy the file guide is. I really want to temper back the tang so that the tang is really quite soft. And you can see a bit of that heat bled into the blade, and that's what I like. All the fittings on the sword are going to be made of 416 stainless. I mill a little slot into there. This is a Craft X mini mill. It is fantastic, so fantastic that when I saw one pop up on Marketplace, a used one, I bought it. So now we're going to file that little radius into the guard. Tap, 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 tap. Make sure it gets tapped on there all the way. And if it doesn't go quite all the way, we go back and forth with files, checking it, filing a little bit away, fitting it up. Right now there's a tiny gap, so we're going to file just a little bit more. Tap, tap, back on we go. Then we have a nice square fitting guard. So let's surface grind it here. Make sure it's got a nice smooth finish. And for the guard and pommel, we're going to be using bloodwood. This is an Australian wood. It's super hard and dense. And also, not to mention, very stable. This project overall took me about 13 days to complete from beginning to end. Let's get that fit up nicely. And actually sliced off a little section off of there. And using the milling machine, I'm going to mill that nice and flat. Now our next section is going to be the handle. And I'm going to look for a piece of ivory. Get some dimensions on here. See if this old little statue works. Looks like it'll work well. What sometimes can be the issue with old ivory is that it could have some little cracks in it. We're going to try to minimize that as much as possible. Milling it flat, and then we're going to mill it square. See, I mark it with the pencil to see where there's still pencil mark until you see no more pencil mark. Let's mark out the tang here. And mill out that slot. Starting off with a drill bit. The first drill a hole all the way through. And then we'll mill out the width of the slot. It doesn't quite fit on, as you can see. So we're using this extended bit for this rotary burr. You can buy these on Amazon, but I've seen them at other places. Going to carve out that inside until it fits perfectly. So here we're going to cut the threads. These are 10 by 32 threads. They're imperial threads, but they provide good grip. And now we're going to work on the pommel area. Drill the holes in all these sections. Using the counter bore, drill down part way into the bottom of the pommel. So let's go for a dry fit up here. Got a temporary nut on the back. Everything feels great and solid. Let's drill some alignment pinholes. These will be so that when you take apart the sword, you'll know exactly how to put it back together again. Now we're going to surface grind both sides of the handle so that they will be absolutely centered to each other. Just mesmerizing. Alright, that's fitting nice. Let's round off the guard here. And the pommel. Putting a little flat on the pommel. And we're going to bed the tang here. So what we're going to do is we're going to coat everything that we don't want epoxy to stick to with some Vaseline. And then we're going to fill up that ivory handle with epoxy, tighten it up. We're going to let the epoxy dry so that it's just barely dry. Then pull it apart and clean up all the glue. For fun, I engraved this, which is, "He who lives by the sword shall die by the sword." Jesus' words in the gospel. This won't be on the finished sword. It's just for fun to remind me. Rather choose peace than violence. Rounding off the pommel here. The bloodwood is nice wood. Surface grinding the ivory. Gonna mark out that nice oval here. And grind this nice and round. Grinding a ball is always a little bit difficult, but once you get a little bit of the hang of it, you just can do it quite easily. Now we're going to do the finger grips in the sword, as is typical on the Roman swords. Do some sanding to these parts. So here we have the piece kind of roughly fit up. You can see the fuller looks fantastic. And we're going to grind the blade. To begin the bevels, we're going to scribe along the whole outside perimeter to find out where the center of the edge is, which you can see here. Starting off with a crispy new belt. We're going to start grinding this blade. It's over 23 inches long, so it's a lot of grinding to do. But good sharp abrasive helps a lot. Maritime Knife Supply sells the Norton Blaze belts, which I really like. This sword is going to be hollow ground. I'm grinding it on a 12-inch wheel. These will give some really nice, tall, shallow hollows. Once I grind the 36 grit, we're going to move up to the 240 grit belt. That'll really clean up the scratches left. That's looking so good. A hollow grind is also more interesting to look at. After grinding, look at this. It's so light now. Look how that's fit on the guard. So I have this pommel, and I didn't like it. So I made one that was about 50% larger. It looks so much nicer now. Just fantastic. So let's start the hand sanding of the handle. After hand sanding, we go to buff it. Ivory takes such a nice polish always. Look how shiny that is. Using the orbital sander, I'm going to start sanding the guard and the pommel. Sand that nice and fine. Make sure all the scuffs and scratches are out. And then we can polish. Bloodwood takes a nice polish too. WD-40 is just a fantastic buffing compound cleaner, so I use that often. Let's hand sand the blade. Hand sanding the blade took almost 2 hours, but you know, you put on some nice music or a nice podcast and it seems to fly by. I hand sanded it to 600 grit. Look how nice this looks. Just beautiful. Those hollow grinds are fantastic. Hollow grinds on the bevel and that hollow fuller. Let's go etch this blade. So we're cleaning it. Just in the sink. And into the acid. Let's have a look here. Oh, that pattern is so nice. So nice. Wow. It sits in the acid for about 45 minutes and then I pull it out, dry it, and oil it. Let's work on the tang nut now. So turning down the shank of the tang nut, which will go inside the pommel. A little step there. And the end of the tang nut is going to be an acorn. So using my Fordham in my engraving room, I carve all little dimples in there. Well, here is the finished Felix sword. It is so maneuverable. The finish is just gorgeous. I blackened all the stainless fittings so they have a nice dark gray appearance. The blade pattern is just beautiful. And that fuller is just so great. The bloodwood and ivory pair very well together. I'm glad I went with that choice. Texturing on the guard too. Get that cool pattern on the blade. That ladder pattern is just glorious. Just fantastic. That acorn on the pommel turned out really nice, and it is bookended with another acorn on the display. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these 13 days of work as much as I did. And again, the link is in the description to go vote for your favorite piece. As always, I thank you so much for watching this video, seeing what I do, and I'm always humbled by your really nice words and nice comments. Till next time.